We're Malin and Johan, a Swedish couple that have been sailing full-time since 2016. After 3.5 years of sailing, we welcomed our daughter Vera on board. Our latest adventure is to build our dream boat, a 50-foot sailboat that we're building ourselves on our farm. Welcome aboard and please subscribe for weekly episodes.
Well, it's been really nice to have a few days off, but now vacation is over and I don't really mind since the rain is just pouring down now and it's supposed to be like this for a few days. But it's okay. I'm in here in the barn working on the boat, and yesterday I prepared 12 strips that are now ready to go onto the hull on the other side, and this is the amount that we need to get back even on both sides. I actually mounted one more piece on this side yesterday, so we're well past the midpoint on this side now in the bow. The pile of strips that we have out there is starting to get really low, so I'm thinking maybe we have enough to make another 20 or so of these strips, but that's it. So we're getting close to not having any more cedar, so it's time to start thinking about getting some more. For the last 12 square meters is my calculations. That's what we're missing on the bottom of the hull. But that's something that we will deal with later once we have all of these strips and the cedar we have out there on the hull. So now it's just working as always to, you know, just finish with the planking of the hull. It's been actually quite a bit more challenging than I first thought when I started out thinking about building a boat this way. I mean, it's still okay, but the amount of time that this takes is quite a bit more than I first counted on. And the main reason for that is that the higher up you get, the harder and longer it takes to install every piece. I mean, down here, we could do one strip in 25-30 minutes, but now up there, it's, for me, doing one plank alone, it's 1 hour and 30 to 40 minutes, including everything. So that's a pretty big difference. And I think what I didn't think about when I planned this out was that the hull was going to sit this high. And maybe that was a little bit of a mistake. We could have made this strong back a bit lower, but I really wanted to have the waterline in a perfectly, you know, horizontal line. Makes everything so much easier to line everything up when you're replacing out the temporary frames. And the reason that it got this high back here is since the shear line is pretty, you know, it's the bow section, the hull is much higher or taller up in the bow than it is in the stern, and that's why it's sitting a bit like this. But once the hull is turned over and inside the barn again, we will really make an effort to try to get those stands or that we will put the hull in, to make them as low as possible, so it will be easier to first get in and out of the hull, but also working on the next to the hull, and make sure that we have the full amount of headroom that we need to put on that deck house on the hull later on. Yeah, building boats takes up a lot of space. That's something that I have really learned. we're just a few pieces away from closing up the bow now. As you can see, I'm actually over the center line on the port side of the hull here. But now I need to cut these pieces so I can continue adding more pieces on this side. So they will intersect sitting against this surface here, against the stem. So I will cut these with the multi-cutter at an angle or according to this plane here. And then it's just to continue adding more pieces. I have also cut this flush, the face here, where we're going to add the actual bow, the bow cone later on. So that's another piece that I will need to start producing soon. Yeah, and that bow cone will sit along this face up until here, roughly. And then this curve of the stem, that will be roughly the form of the bow. So it won't be like a 90-degree or something like that. But some of the things up here needs to be hand, adjusted. So there will be some handiwork done here. Not everything is possible to do with the CNC, which is kind of nice. I like this work as well. How the actual radius will look here. That's something that I'll form a bit more by hand and a sander, I'm thinking. So one more piece and the bow cone area is closed off, and then we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 7 pieces in total to be on an even pace on this side as we are on the port side. As you can see, we're getting closer. Only 3 more strips on the port side to be on an even level with the starboard side of the hull. And also the bow is starting to really close up now. That will be really interesting to see how the shape will actually be up there and how easy it will be to get the correct shape. The plan for today is to try to get the rest of the strips on the hull. And also I'm thinking that I will add all those dowels that goes through the planks into the stem on both sides. I've done a few of them on this side, but the rest of those. So it's been a few really busy days, but finally we have a fully planked bow section of the hull, which to me is a real milestone, because now you get a feel for how the actual shape of the bow will look once the hull is finished. Even without the bow cone that will sit on top of the stem here. I know that there's still a lot of work before this hull is finished, but for every week now it feels more and more like it's a real boat we're building, which is so good for your motivation. And since it is a major project, you need to have these small milestones, because otherwise you will burn out. So this is one of those for me, and I'm really happy that we have reached this far in the project. So it feels nice to have all the dowels installed in the strips that are going to have a dowel in them. For the strips that we're going to have up here, we won't have any dowels in those, since the grain in the stem and in the strips are more or less in the same direction up here. So we'll be good without them. Some of you have asked why the stem is this shiny. It's because I have coated it with a layer of epoxy. But before we glue the cedar strips to this, we sand this first with a pretty coarse grit sandpaper to give a good grip. So now moving forward, it's starting to get pretty exciting up here, because every piece that we will put on here, we will start moving aft on the hull and closing up more sections of the bottom part of the hull. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye bye.